1976 wasn't just another year in music. It was chaos wrapped in glitter and guitar riffs. Disco was taking over the clubs, rock ruled the stadiums, and FM radio was blasting something new every week. But here's the twist. For every superstar like Zeppelin or Fleetwood Mac, there were artists who got only one shot at glory. One song, one moment, one chance to be remembered forever. And sometimes that one hit was all it took. That's the strange magic of one-hit wonders. You might not remember the names, but the songs. They've lived for decades. They sneak into movie soundtracks, wedding playlists, commercials, and karaoke nights. They're songs that defined a generation, and then left their creators behind. Which raises the question, what does it feel like to touch the top of the charts only to lose it all in a flash? Today, we're counting down the top 10 one-hit wonders of 1976, a year packed with unforgettable anthems and bizarre novelties. Some of these tracks you'll recognize instantly, others might surprise you, but every single one has a story worth telling. And we're starting with a funk rock explosion that refuses to die, a song that still fills dance floors nearly 50 years later. Number 1, Wild Cherry, Play That Funky Music. Picture it, a smoky Ohio club in the mid-70s. Wild Cherry, just another rock band trying to make a name for themselves, is slogging through another set. The crowd isn't moving, the energy is flat, until one heckler shouts something that would change music history forever. Play that funky music, white boy. Instead of brushing it off, lead singer Rob Parisi takes it seriously. He jots the phrase down on a bar napkin, and in that moment, a piece of rock history is born. What came out of that insult-turned inspiration was pure magic. A gritty guitar riff wrapped around a disco-funk groove, topped off with that unforgettable chorus. When Play That Funky Music hit the airwaves in 1976, it didn't just climb the charts, it exploded. Within months, the song shot to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, went platinum, and turned Wild Cherry into overnight sensations. For a moment, it felt like they had cracked the code. Rock fans, funk lovers, and disco dancers all claimed it as their anthem. The song was blasting out of car radios, filling dance floors, and pumping through every house party that summer. It was a rare track that cut across genres, uniting people who normally hated each other's music. That crossover power made it one of the most unstoppable hits of the decade. But behind the scenes, the pressure was already building. Wild Cherry tried to follow up with more funk-inspired tracks, but nothing matched the raw lightning of their breakthrough hit. Each single charted lower than the last, and within a few short years, the band was finished. They had soared to the top, only to find out there was no second act. And yet, the song lived on without them. DJs never stopped spinning it, cover bands never stopped playing it, and new generations kept rediscovering it. Even bands like Metallica and Vanilla Ice would reference it decades later, proving just how deeply it had embedded itself in pop culture. Wild Cherry might not have survived as a band, but their anthem refused to die. That's the strange beauty of one-hit wonders. The name fades into trivia night answers, but the song becomes immortal. To this day, Play That Funky Music is still blasting at weddings, barbecues, and dive bars across the world. A 1976 hit that refuses to stay buried, and a reminder that sometimes one song is all it takes. Number 2, Starland vocal band, Afternoon Delight.
Sky rockets in flight, afternoon delight.
Few songs capture the mood of 1976 quite like Starland vocal band's Afternoon Delight. With its sweet harmonies and cheerful acoustic strumming, it sounded innocent on the surface, until you realized the lyrics were about sneaking away for a little midday romance. That cheeky double meaning is exactly what made the song unforgettable. And it turned a brand new group from Washington, D.C. into chart-topping stars almost overnight. Afternoon Delight climbed all the way to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became one of the biggest songs of the year. Its catchy chorus, complete with that soaring "skyrockets in flight" hook, was the kind of earworm you couldn't escape even if you wanted to. For a band that had just formed, the sudden fame was overwhelming. Practically overnight, they went from playing small clubs to appearing on national television. The industry took notice too. At the 1977 Grammys, Starland vocal band stunned critics by winning the award for Best New Artist, beating out Boston. Yes, that Boston, whose debut album went on to become one of the best-selling rock albums of all time. Looking back, many music historians still call it one of the most shocking Grammy upsets in history. It was proof that Afternoon Delight wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural moment. But just like a fleeting summer fling, the band's success didn't last. Follow-up singles failed to capture the same magic, and their self-titled TV variety show, rushed into production by a desperate network hoping to cash in, was a critical flop. Within just a couple of years, the group had completely faded from the charts, remembered only for that one infamous tune. Still, Afternoon Delight had legs. It became one of the most parodied songs in American pop culture, showing up everywhere from commercials to TV shows. Even decades later, Anchorman, the legend of Ron Burgundy, used it in a now iconic sing-along scene, cementing its place as a song that refuses to die. People might roll their eyes at its goofy innocence, but they never forget it. That's the legacy of Starland Vocal Band, a group that came out of nowhere, touched the top of the world with one slyly suggestive hit, and disappeared almost as quickly as they arrived. Afternoon Delight may have been a one-time success, but its mix of charm, humor, and undeniable catchiness made it one of the most enduring one-hit wonders of 1976. Number 3, Gary Wright, Dreamweaver. If there's one song that feels like drifting through a dream in the middle of the 1970s, it's Gary Wright's Dreamweaver. Built almost entirely on keyboards and synths, it stood out instantly from the guitar-heavy rock of the era. Released in late 1975 but exploding on the charts in 1976, it became one of the most defining ballads of the year, a hypnotic track that sounded like the future. What made Dreamweaver so unusual was its production. Wright ditched the typical band setup of guitars, bass, and drums, and instead leaned into the emerging world of synthesizers. Backed only by keyboards and a drum machine, the song had a spacey, otherworldly vibe that felt decades ahead of its time. While most artists were chasing disco or arena rock, Wright was crafting something far more ethereal. The gamble paid off. Dreamweaver climbed to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1976 and turned Gary Wright into an international star almost overnight. Its lyrics, inspired by Eastern philosophy and a book given to him by George Harrison of the Beatles, spoke of love, transcendence, and inner peace, striking a chord with listeners who were looking for something deeper than another dance track. But like so many others on this list, Wright couldn't replicate the magic. He had one more minor hit, Love Is Alive, but nothing ever came close to the cultural impact of Dreamweaver. The song became his signature while the rest of his career faded into the background. He wasn't forgotten exactly, just permanently defined by one track. Decades later, Dreamweaver found new life thanks to movies and pop culture. From Wayne's World in the 1990s to countless TV shows and commercials, the song became a shorthand for surreal, romantic, or dreamlike moments. Each time it reappeared, a new generation rediscovered Wright's biggest hit. That's the beauty of Dreamweaver. It wasn't just another pop single, it was sway. It was a glimpse into where music could go. Gary Wright may not have stayed in the spotlight, but with one song, he carved out a timeless place in rock history. Dreamweaver is more than a one-hit wonder. It's a sonic time capsule from 1976 that still feels like it's floating in another world. Number 4, Rick Dees, Disco Duck. By 1976, disco fever had completely taken over America. The Bee Gees were on the rise, dance floors were packed every night, and everyone was looking for the next big groove. Enter Rick Dees. Not a seasoned musician, but a Memphis radio DJ with a wild idea. What if he made a disco track, sung from the perspective of a duck? It sounded ridiculous, but the result, Disco Duck, became one of the strangest and most successful novelty hits of the decade. Released in the summer of 1976, Disco Duck was exactly what the title promised. A funky beat, cartoonish vocals, and Dees himself quacking over the top of it. Nobody expected it to go anywhere, but to everyone's shock, it rocketed up the charts. By October, it had reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, selling over 6 million copies worldwide. It was silly, it was goofy, and yet somehow it worked. The success turned Rick Dees into an overnight celebrity, but there was a problem. Because he was a working DJ, his own radio station banned him from playing the song, worried it would be a conflict of interest. That didn't matter to the public, though. They couldn't get enough. For a brief moment, Disco Duck was the soundtrack of America's dance craze. Of course, novelty hits almost never last. Dees tried to follow up with sequels and other comedy records, but lightning didn't strike twice. His music career fizzled as quickly as it had begun, and Disco Duck became a punchline in music history. While disco itself went on to dominate the charts, Rick Dees was left with nothing more than one surreal, feathered hit. But here's the twist. Dees didn't disappear. Instead, he leaned into his real talent, broadcasting. He went on to become one of the most successful radio personalities in America, hosting Rick Dees' weekly Top 40 for decades. While Disco Duck may have made him famous, radio kept him relevant. In the end, Disco Duck is remembered less as a serious piece of music and more as a cultural oddity. A perfect example of how wild and unpredictable 1976 really was. It might make you laugh now, but in its time it was proof that disco's grip on America was so strong that even a quacking duck could become a superstar. Number 5. Vicki Sue Robinson, Turn the Beat Around.
Turn the beat around. Love to hear percussion.
If disco had a heartbeat, in 1976 it sounded a lot like Vicki Sue Robinson's Turn the Beat Around. With its pounding percussion, blasting horns, and Robinson's powerhouse vocals, the track lit up dance floors around the world. It wasn't just another disco tune, it was a call to arms for dancers, a reminder that rhythm itself could be the star of the show. Robinson wasn't a huge name before this hit. She'd worked as a Broadway performer and backup singer, hustling for years to break through. But the moment she stepped into the studio and laid down the vocals for Turn the Beat Around, everything changed. Her soaring delivery gave the track an energy that was impossible to ignore, and when it hit radio, it felt like a rocket had launched. By the summer of 1976, the song was everywhere. It shot up the charts, peaking at number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 and dominating the club scene. DJs loved it because it was built for dancing. The layers of Latin percussion and disco rhythm practically forced people out of their chairs. For Robinson, it was the breakthrough she had been chasing her entire career. But as disco quickly became oversaturated, Robinson struggled to follow it up. Her later singles never came close to the same success, and as the backlash against disco hit in the late 70s, her career faded. Like so many artists of the era, she became defined by one track, a shining moment in the spotlight that was impossible to replicate, yet the song refused to die. Decades later, Gloria Estefan covered it in the 90s, introducing it to a whole new generation. It's still played in clubs, used in movies, and instantly recognizable from its opening beats. Vicki Sue Robinson may have only had one major hit, but it was one powerful enough to outlive her time on the charts. That's the magic of Turn the Beat Around. It wasn't just a disco single. It was a declaration that rhythm itself is what drives music. Robinson might be remembered as a one-hit wonder, but with this anthem, she secured her place in the history of disco forever. Number 6. John Sebastian, Welcome Back.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Welcome back, welcome.
Sometimes a song's success has less to do with the artist and more to do with the moment it's attached to. That was the case with John Sebastian's Welcome Back, the theme song to the hit sitcom Welcome Back, Kotter. The show, starring a young John Travolta, was a surprise television sensation in 1976. And its theme song was so catchy that it quickly escaped the TV screen and became a hit in its own right. Sebastian was no stranger to music before this. As the frontman of the Lovin' Spoonful, he'd helped define 60s folk rock with hits like Do You Believe in Magic and Summer in the City. But by the mid-70s, his career had cooled. Writing a theme song for a sitcom seemed like just another gig, not a career revival. Then lightning struck. Welcome Back resonated far beyond the TV audience. Its breezy, feel-good melody and laid-back lyrics gave it universal appeal. By May 1976, the song had climbed all the way to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, making Sebastian a chart-topping solo act more than a decade after his Spoonful days. For a brief moment, he was back in the spotlight, riding the wave of a pop culture phenomenon. But unlike the sitcom it was tied to, Sebastian couldn't sustain the momentum. His follow-up singles failed to chart, and without the boost of television, his solo career quickly lost steam. While Welcome Back, Kotter ran for 4 seasons, Sebastian's time in the mainstream spotlight ended almost as soon as it had begun. Still, the song lived on as a time capsule of the era. Whenever people look back at 70s television, Welcome Back is right there, instantly transporting listeners to that moment when Travolta was still a rising star, and sitcom theme songs could top the radio charts. It became one of the rare TV themes that fully crossed over into pop culture history. For John Sebastian, Welcome Back was both a blessing and a curse. It gave him one last trip to the top, cementing his place as more than just a 60s folk hero, but it also froze him in time. Decades later, when people hear his name, it's almost always tied to that single sunny song. And in the world of one-hit wonders, there are far worse legacies to have. Number 7, Bellamy Brothers, Let Your Love Flow.
Just let your love flow like a mountain stream and let your love roll.
In 1976, the airwaves were full of disco grooves and arena rock anthems, but sometimes all it took was a simple, sunny love song to cut through the noise. That's exactly what the Bellamy Brothers delivered with Let Your Love Flow. With its easygoing charm and universal message, the track became one of the biggest hits of the year and the duo's one shining moment in the pop spotlight. The Bellamy Brothers, Howard and David, were Florida natives who had been knocking around the music scene without much success. Then fate intervened. Their manager happened to connect them with a song written by Neil Diamond's former roadie, Larry E. Williams. The brothers took it into the studio, gave it their warm harmonies and laid-back country pop flavor, and suddenly had a song that felt like bottled sunshine. Let Your Love Flow became an instant crossover smash. It soared to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and topped charts in multiple countries, turning the Bellamy Brothers into international stars. The song's message was simple but irresistible. Love is universal, and the best thing you can do is let it shine. In a decade defined by excess and experimentation, its honesty and optimism struck a nerve. But the pop world moved on quickly. While the Bellamy Brothers kept recording, they couldn't replicate that same mainstream magic. Within a year, they had disappeared from the pop charts. Yet rather than fade into obscurity, the brothers pivoted. They leaned fully into country music and built a long, respectable career with dozens of country hits, just not in the same pop arena where they first broke through. Meanwhile, Let Your Love Flow lived a life of its own. It became a staple of soft rock playlists, resurfaced in commercials, and was covered by multiple artists across the decades. Its cheerful energy made it timeless, the kind of track you hear once and instantly feel better. For the Bellamy Brothers, the song was both a blessing and a dividing line. It was the track that introduced them to the world, but also the one that forever defined them in pop culture. In the grand story of one-hit wonders, Let Your Love Flow remains proof that sometimes the simplest songs are the ones that last the longest. Number 8, Maxine, Nightingale, Right Back Where We Started From. Every now and then, a song comes along that feels like pure sunshine bottled into 3 minutes. In 1976, that song was Maxine Nightingale's Right Back Where We Started From. With its upbeat groove, soaring vocals, and irresistible hook, it became one of the happiest, most infectious tracks of the year. The kind of song that made you roll down your car windows and sing along. Nightingale was a British singer who had been working quietly in the background, performing in musicals and doing session work. She wasn't exactly a household name when she recorded Right Back Where We Started From. But the song's writer and producer, J. Vincent Edwards, knew he had a potential hit and pushed for her to take the lead vocal. That decision would change the trajectory of her career. When the single hit radio, it exploded. The song raced up the charts, reaching number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and becoming a worldwide smash. Its blend of disco rhythm and Motown-inspired soul made it perfect for the moment, and Nightingale's passionate delivery gave it a timeless quality. For a brief period, she was suddenly everywhere, a fresh face with a sound that demanded attention. But like so many artists on this list, the momentum didn't last. Nightingale released more music, but none of her follow-ups connected with the same force. The late 70s were a brutal time for artists trying to keep pace with the rapid shifts in disco, funk, and pop, and she quickly found herself out of the spotlight. By the end of the decade, her name had mostly faded from the charts. Still, Right Back Where We Started From never truly went away. It resurfaced in the 90s thanks to the movie Slapshot and later in A Knight's Tale, introducing the track to entirely new generations. Even today, it shows up in commercials and soundtracks, keeping its joyful energy alive. For Maxine Nightingale, the song was both her one big shot and her lasting legacy. While her career may not have blossomed beyond that moment, she left behind a track that continues to spread joy nearly 5 decades later. In the unpredictable world of one-hit wonders, that's a victory in itself. Number 9, Henry Gross, Shannon. Not every hit from 1976 was about partying, dancing, or disco lights. Some hits struck a far more emotional chord, and Henry Gross's Shannon is proof of that. Unlike the upbeat anthems dominating the charts that year, Shannon was a heartbreaking ballad written about the death of a dog. Strange as that sounds, it connected with millions of listeners and became one of the most memorable tearjerkers of the decade. Gross had been a founding member of the retro rock group Shannon before striking out on his own. But it wasn't until he wrote Shannon, inspired by the passing of Beach Boy Carl Wilson's beloved Irish setter, that he found his breakthrough. The song's soft harmonies and gentle delivery gave it a haunting, bittersweet quality that stood apart from the bombastic hits of 1976. When it hit the airwaves, audiences were caught off guard and captivated. Shannon climbed into the top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 and gave Gross the biggest success of his career. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't trendy, but it was deeply personal. And sometimes, that's all a song needs to leave a lasting mark. But like many artists in this countdown, Gross couldn't turn that one hit into a long career. His later singles struggled to gain traction, and within a few years, he had largely disappeared from the pop charts. The bittersweet irony is that his biggest moment came from a song about loss, and that theme carried over into his own career trajectory. Still, Shannon never vanished completely. It has remained a cult favorite among fans of 70s soft rock, and for those who remember it, the song holds a special emotional power. It's not a track that shows up at weddings or in commercials, but when it does resurface, it always manages to hit hard. For Henry Gross, Shannon was a one-time brush with stardom, a reminder that sometimes even the most unlikely subjects can produce a hit. While his career didn't last, that one tender ballad earned him a permanent spot in the story of 1976, and in the hearts of those who still feel the song's quiet sadness. Number 10, Elvin Bishop, Fooled Around and Fell in Love. By the mid-1970s, Elvin Bishop was already respected as a blues rock guitarist, but he wasn't exactly a household name. That changed in 1976 with the release of Fooled Around and Fell in Love. Smooth, soulful, and drenched in emotion, the ballad became his one and only mainstream hit. Though there's a twist to the story that makes it even more unusual. Bishop wrote the song himself, but when it came time to record, he realized his own voice didn't fit the tender ballad he'd created. Instead, he handed the microphone to Mickey Thomas, then a backup singer in his band. Thomas's soaring vocals gave the track its signature sound, turning what could have been a forgotten album cut into a massive radio hit. The gamble worked. Fooled Around and Fell in Love shot up the charts, eventually peaking at number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and becoming one of the biggest love songs of the year. Suddenly, Bishop found himself in the pop spotlight, thanks to a song he didn't even sing himself. For Mickey Thomas, it was also a career-making moment. He'd later become the lead singer of Jefferson Starship. For Bishop, though, the success was bittersweet. While he remained a respected guitarist and a staple of the blues rock circuit, none of his later work ever matched the commercial heights of Fooled Around and Fell in Love. In the eyes of mainstream audiences, he was frozen in time, defined by one perfect ballad that didn't even feature his own voice. Still, the song itself lived on. Over the decades, it's been featured in countless films, TV shows, and even recent superhero blockbusters, keeping it alive for new generations. Its timeless theme of stumbling unexpectedly into love makes it one of those songs that never really ages. For Elvin Bishop, it may have been his only major hit, but it gave him a legacy far beyond the blues clubs he came from. Fooled Around and Fell in Love remains one of the most beloved one-hit wonders of 1976, proof that sometimes one perfect song is all you need to leave your mark. And that's our countdown of 1976's greatest one-hit wonders. From Wild Cherry's funky anthem to Elvin Bishop's soulful ballad, each of these songs captured lightning in a bottle. One moment at the top before fading into history. They may not have built long careers, but their music lives on in weddings, movies, and playlists nearly 50 years later. That's the beauty of one-hit wonders. One song can outlast everything else. So tell us, which of these tracks is your favorite? And which one instantly takes you back to the summer of '76? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more forgotten gems from music history.